Hello there, I'm the Commonsense guy. Today I'm going to be doing a video that I didn't actually want to do, and a video that I wasn't going to do until I had a look around and found out that there aren't many sources, or aren't many people that are actually doing this story. And I've been able and lucky enough to actually find this story on the Daily Mail and be able to actually push it. I found some little tweets and things like that on Twitter about different bits and pieces, which is the reason how and why I found this story. Now, I'm not trying to say that I'm a detective or a sleuth or anything. I'm just trying to say that it is quite hard to find a story if you're not looking for it. And that's the point. This is the point of the story that should be produced out there. Now I wouldn't normally do something like this to make it political, but if the Conservatives actually tackled this and went on head on, they would win votes in the North no end. And to make this a non-political bias as well, if Labour or Lib Dems were to even mention this to say that they were going to tackle it, I am absolutely 100% sure that Labour would win most of the votes up north. I'm also 100% that Lib Dems would probably win a fair majority, at least win a good number of seats up there, just simply because nobody's talking about it, nobody's really mentioning it. And anybody that does mention it is always branded a racist, and you don't know what you're talking about, you don't live there, you don't know what the culture is. Oh, we'll blame it on the culture and whatever, just blame it on whatever. But girls of 11 are being raped, houses are being burnt down, people are pranking their cars to crash into each other to kill other kids. Now, I don't know what you guys think of that, but that's exactly what's happening in this story, and we're going to get into this story. Now, before we do, I just wanted to give a little bit of disclosure. There are quite a lot of pictures that the Daily Mail have used to fill the space on the internet page for this. So if you can't see all of the pictures, because I'm not using my regular rig at the minute, so you'll have to excuse me. But you'll see that there are quite a lot of pictures, and if there are any pictures that do disturb you, which is my version of giving the trigger organ, I suppose, then sorry, but suck it up, buttercup. This story needs to be said, and if you don't want this story to be told, then get the fuck off my channel. Other than that, let's get into the video. As you can see, we're going to get straight into this story. We're going to go straight onto the Daily Mail. We're not going to go into anything else. Girls must be saved from going through this hell. Call for public inquiry into Telford sex scandal as it emerges up to 1,000 children as young as 11 were drugged, beaten and raped for over 40 fucking years. And nobody wanted to mention a goddamn thing about it. Not one thing mentioned until obviously this story has been broke. That's a hell of a fucking long time, and I'm sorry I'm swearing, but it's just the sheer length of time that this has been going on for, which nobody has even mentioned anything. Now, this is obviously going to be the point that where people are going to say, oh, well, nobody come forward. Well, when we get through this story, you'll find out there are a lot of mums and a lot of parents in general that actually come forward and told the police, and the girls themselves come forward and told the police, but nothing was ever fucking done about it. Not one thing. And you see the girl that's in this picture, the young girl that's there with the counterpart picture of her being older. She was sexually abused from the age of 11. That's the reason why they put her up there and her picture's up there first. And I'm pretty sure that that's her house as well, that has been set on fire by one of the people to try and kill two of the lasses. Now, until I actually read the story again, I'm not sure if the lasses died or not. But it's besides the point. It is at least attempted murder. And this is the most scariest thing. Most scariest thing, that this has been going on for over 40 years. Over 40. And the police have done fuck all on it. The council have done nothing on it. Feminists have done nothing on it. Anti-SJWs have done nothing on it. Nobody has done anything for these poor girls. Not one iota. And as a nation, all I can say is that we failed them. But the thing is, we have to learn from this, and we have to actually produce the fact that we need to carry on. We need to make sure this does not happen to anybody else. And we can't be afraid to talk about it because of racism or the ideas of being called racist. We need to talk about these issues now. It needs to be at the forefront. We need to look after our young children, our young girls. And I cannot make it any clearer than that. Girls in the town of Telford, Shropshire, were drugged, beaten and raped at the hands of a grooming gang active since the 1980s. Allegations are said to have been mishandled by authorities. Mishandled? Misfucking handled. For it to go on that bloody long, there must have been some sort of level of corruption. Some sort of form of, I don't know, protectionism. Somebody was paying somebody something for some sort of protection for it to go on for that length of time with the amount of people that would have gone to the police. Even if it's only one person per year, there would have been enough for somebody to get circumstantial evidence at least. So yeah, mishandled by authorities. In other words, not looked upon, not reported on. But let's carry on. With many perpetrators going unpunished, and probably still will do to this day. While it is claimed similar abuse continues in the area, I really don't fucking believe it. I really don't disbelieve it that there's still abuse going on and people still not acting upon it. Even though the Conservatives, the police are saying, oh yeah, let us know, we'll do something about it. You're not doing anything about it. You're not even reporting it in the national news. Reports to Sunday Mirror. Home Office figures show there were 15.1 child sex crimes reported per 10,000 residents in a year to September 2015. Telford's population is 155,000, meaning a potential 225 victims. Just put that into consideration for a minute. 225 victims out of a population quite small, to be fair, for a biggish town, meaning probably a lot of people were known or had at least known associates with these people. It would have affected them in some way or form. Now we've got Telford's Conservative MP Lucy Allen, who has previously called for a Rotherham-style inquiry into the allegations and called the latest reports extremely serious and shocking. Not just serious and shocking, my darling, absolutely ludicrous, because if it started in the 80s, almost every political, no, actually, every political party has fouled these girls. Every major political party has fouled these girls. You've had the Tories in charge in the 80s, you had Labour in charge most of the 90s, and you had a coalition government in the 2000s. So for people to come out and say that, oh, we weren't in power when this type of thing happened, well, sorry, no, you're completely wrong. You just didn't even want to admit it, didn't even want to have a look at it. People just were not bothered about the girls in our own countries up in the north. It would matter if it was your girl though, wouldn't it, Mr. MPs and Mrs. MPs? It would matter if it was your little girl. There must now be an independent inquiry into child sexual exploitation in Telford. Why not in the UK? Why not in the UK? Why does it have to be in the places where we already know it's happened? Why can't it be a preventative strike instead of an actual strike afterwards, which absolutely has no bearing on the people that have already had this happen to this? These are horrendous points that have happened to them. Why does it have to be in the places where it's already happened? Please, MPs, please answer that on a postcard for me, for fuck's sake. So that our community can have absolute confidence in the authorities. There is no confidence in the authorities. You go to the authorities, you get called a racist. She told the paper a mother and 4 teenage girls have been linked to the allegations of abuse. Lucy Lowe, 16, died alongside her mother and sister after the man who had been abusing her, 26-year-old, not even going to say that name, set fire to the house. The taxi driver first targeted Lucy in 1997. She gave birth to his child when she was just fucking 14. Just 14. Social service weren't obviously not interested at this point. The mother can't do anything about it. The taxi driver is absolutely just a horrid person and set fire to their house and everything else like that. This is absolutely horrendous. And this is just obviously cherry-picked stories by the Daily Mail to make it be the worst that it is. But I can't imagine that these are the only stories that have been this bad. I can't imagine it. This is just absolutely abhorrent. This just doesn't bear thinking about. But it has to be. We have to talk about it. It has to now be reported. It has to now be pushed to the forefront. You cannot hide from this racial divide anymore, this cultural stereotype that they don't know what they're doing. They obviously fucking do, because they've done it in 3-4 different towns now. And that's just in the ones that we know about, without the ones that are still going on. As you can see, this is a picture of a young lady. If you look at the bottom, there is some text. This young lady's name was called Vicky Round, was just 20. When she died of a suspected overdose, she had been forced into crack cocaine and heroin addiction by her abusers. Now, I just wanted to show you how young some of these girls look, and just what these people did to keep the level of abuse and to keep them in control of what was going on, what they had to do to keep them there. These were not people that were there by choice. So when some people would say, oh, it takes two to tango, as I remember somebody saying on one of the first grooming gang videos that I did, on this case, if somebody's completely and utterly addicted and is absolutely forced to do what you tell them to do, that's not a case of two to tango. That's taking the ability of the other person to choose. And unfortunately, this girl chose a way out that was maybe the best option for her, maybe, but unfortunately took her own life for it. These are the things that need to be remembered. These are the things that need to be talked about. Not the worry about multiculturalism. Does it work? Does it not work? Who gives a fuck? If we're trying to sweep cases like this under the carpet, it's obviously not working. We need a higher level of integration, don't we? That is as simple as that. We need to make sure people are integrated properly, to make sure that things like this don't happen. And for people to say, oh, it doesn't happen often, it's been happening for over 40 years in Telford. This is the 4th city it is now happened at, that we know of. That we know of. And I guarantee you in the years to come there is going to be more. And I'm going to add to this playlist, and I want you to listen to every single one. And I bet you it's exactly the same story. We were too scared to come forward because of racial prejudice. We were too scared to come forward because the police wouldn't do anything for us. And the police need to have a hard, long look at themselves for the protect and serve of our nationalisations, to look after our people. And yes, that does include people of any race. I'm not discriminating against that or any culture. But you're there to be blind justice. You're there to arrest perpetrators on the suspects of crimes and work out if they are correct or wrong in the crimes that they have done or committed. It's not hard policing. You just gotta actually fucking do it though, haven't you? Moving on, you have the Mahood, who was jailed for murdering Lucy, the person we talked about before, the 11-year-old that was abused. Her mother, Eileen, and her sister Sarah, 17, however, he was never arrested or charged with any sex abuse crimes over his involvement with the young girl. Another victim, who was drugged and gang raped by 9 men 2 years later, said that Lucy's death was used as a warning to other girls who might speak out. The schoolgirl, who remains anonymous, said she was driven to try to kill herself. These are sad stories, and they're affecting me as I'm reading them, simply because they've obviously gone to the police, all of these people, all of them, and nobody's helped them. They've all had to have fended for themselves. They've all had to try and live peaceful lives while being persecuted. You've got the top of the house that you can see on this picture that was burnt, and you can see the other bit of it on a previous slide. That's been completely burnt out. And yes, that was 3 people that were murdered to cover up the fact that these people were sexually abusing girls. And yet nobody had the foresight to investigate why this was set on fire, why 3 people died in the house. To me, this just is absolutely wrong on so many levels. So when people say that the state should look after us and we should give more power to the state, how does the state help and protect us if they don't want to act on it? Because you're giving that power to the state at this moment in time to decide who lives and who dies, who gives a fuck, who they care about. But yet, people like Lucy and Sarah and Eileen only get stories like this in the Daily Mail after they pick up these stories years after their deaths and do investigation into it. Now, if an investigative reporter can do this, why the fuck can't a police officer, who's supposed to be better because it's their job obviously, why can't a detective do this? And as for the poor schoolgirl that was raped by 9 men, and that's not me saying that, that's what happened from the Daily Mail. This is Daily Mail's point and sources. Who was drugged and gang raped by 9 men 2 years after this fire, and this fire was used as catalyst to scare people, to say that if you were to do anything, if you were to say anything, you were to go to the police, this will happen to you. We've got away with it before. And this is the girl's own words that have just said this. I was scared. My family would be like Lucy's. I thought they'd only be safe if I kill myself, she told the Sunday Mirror. In 2002, another schoolgirl killed herself in an unexplained car accident in Telford. It just keeps on getting worse, doesn't it, for the police at this moment in time? And it's not a pat on your back, well done, you're telling the police that they're all fucked. I'd rather not. I'd rather actually be saying well done to the police for catching these criminals, because that's what they are. In fact, I wouldn't even call them criminals. It gives criminals an actual bad name. These people are beasts. They're nothing but baseful animals that should just be shot. The death penalty should be brought back for people like this. Not because they're racist, not because it's to do with culturalism, not because it's to do with their skin colour, but their levels of crimes. This is barbarity. This is barbarians raping young white women or young girls of 11, of schoolgirl age, drugging them, having 9 men take turns on them. And this is what we call safety. This is what we call fucking multiculturalism. This is what we've fucking got to get used to, is it? And this isn't Tommy Robinson coming up with this type of story and not being able to corroborate it or any fucking thing else like that. This is the Daily Mail that's coming up with this. I just can't get my head around how so many people just don't want to report on this. How this is not a national outcry. How this is least important than Brexit. Now don't get me wrong, I'm a big Brexit supporter, but how is this not more important? This is girls being raped and murdered that are our own flesh and blood. Talking about money and deals and things like that mean absolutely nothing if people are dying in the streets, does it? They can't even go outside. They can't even rely on the police to protect them because they won't do anything about them. That's what this story is about. This is the reason why I'm so annoyed. Let's move on. This, as you can see, is the bottom part of the house for Lucy, Eileen and Sarah. Then you just look at the devastation that's there. Reading a little bit at the bottom, if you would like to read this with me. The burned out remains of the Lowe's family home, where Lucy, Eileen and Sarah Lowe died in a fire started by Lucy's abuser, 26-year-old Azir Ali Mahood. Now the reason why I say that barbarian's name is because it needs to be said. Not for publicity, not for showing people that this is what you need to do to go into being infamous or whatever. Well, the simple fact that anybody that watches this can know who this barbarian is. They can remember their name, remember the crimes that he did, remember the fact that he murdered 3 people to cover up the fact that he raped an 11-year-old for countless years, to where this 11-year-old at 14 had his child, and then as that was going forward she started telling the police, and to silence her and others set her home on fire to kill her mum, older sister and her. This is the level of incompetence that has come from the police and social services in general. How can the fact that a 14-year-old that had a child not be reported? Now, I'm not trying to say the 14-year-old should have had the kid taken away. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, why wasn't social services alerted and kept on to ask the reasons why and what happened? Because surely there's so many organisations that have let these children down. This needs to be talked about. This needs to be talked about. It can't be swept under the carpet anymore. It can't not be ignored to say multiculturalism is working just for the fact of more people coming in and voting and because we don't want to leave the EU. Who gives a fuck about those reasons? Let's put those reasons aside. This needs to be talked about simply because people are raping and literally now killing our children for sexual pleasure and deviance, getting them addicted to crack cocaine, heroin and booze and different things like that, just so that they can continuously rape them, pass them around like they're nothing but cigarettes, and nobody in any sort of form of authority is doing anything or saying anything about this, apart from let's have an inquiry. So moving on, you've got a couple of related articles that are in here. I will be linking the Daily Mail source in here, so all the links that they provide will be also in there as well. So Becky Watson, 13, was killed after a car she was in crashed. At the time of the incident was reported as a prank, but yet somehow was never investigated. Wow. However, it was revealed she had suffered 2 years of sex abuse at the hands of a grooming gang, which began when she was 11. There seems to be a actual point when they like to pick these young little girls up, don't they? I'm not trying to be facetious when I say that. There is an actual correlation between this. In tragic diary entries, she told how she was forced to sleep around. So we have a little bit of a timeline. So the 1980s, girls in Telford are targeted by groups of mainly Asian men. 1996, a resident goes to police with information about key abuser selling underage girls for sex. Now, I don't want to make this seem to a bigger deal than what it is, but it should be one of the biggest deals that has actually gone on. This is 1996. This is over 20 years ago now. We're in 2018, so do the math. It's over 20 years ago. A resident goes to the police with information about a key abuser selling underage girls for sex. Was that followed up? Were arrests made? Were anything made? What actually happened? So late 1990s, sorry. Social workers learn of the problem but do little to help. So you'd have to elaborate on that, Daily Mail. You'd have to elaborate on that, please. Simply because you cannot say that social workers learn of the problem but do little to help. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't like social workers as much as the next person, but at the same time you kind of have to explain what you mean by that. 2000, Lucy Lowe, 16, so after 5 years of continued abuse, after her child is over 2 years old now, is killed alongside her mother and sister in an arson attack by abuser, as we said before, the Barbarian. 2002, abused victim Becky, the one that I showed you before, Watson, 13, is killed in a road accident described as a prank. 2010 to 2012, police probe operation Chalice identifies potentially 200 abusers, but only 9 are jailed. That in itself is an absolute abhorrent stat there, isn't it? Out of 200 people, only 9 of them were jailed, put into prison, or even attempted to. It's a horrible stat.
2016. So almost 26 years. No, sorry, almost 36 years since this began in the 80s. Lucy Allen calls for a public inquiry, but police and council officials in Telford write to the Home Secretary Amber Rudd saying that this isn't necessary. Isn't fucking necessary? Are you fucking kidding me? Sorry, I didn't even read that. But that just shows you the level of corruption that must be put into place in this point. That the fact that there is an MP that's actually calling, which is a Conservative MP, I'll put onto that as well, that is calling for a public inquiry into everything that's going on in Telford. And the Telford police and council officers say, no, we don't want it. Please don't have an independent person come in and actually see what's going on. That's absolutely abhorrent. If you take anything away from this story, that's what you should take away. The fact that they must be complicit. Because if they weren't complicit, why wouldn't they want a fucking inquiry into it? Where's the justice? Where is the justice? March 2018. As many as 1,000 victims are believed to have been abused. Yeah. There's not much I can really say on that point. But nothing was done, she said. And girls like Becky were treated like criminals. And this is why after going to the police. I was crying out for help, but I felt like I had nowhere to run. If Becky's abuser had been properly investigated by the authorities, more girls could have been saved from going through this hell. Vicky Round, a friend of Becky's, was abused by the same gang. They forced her into a crack cocaine addiction aged 12. By 14 she was taking heroin regularly. She died aged 20 after a suspected drug overdose. In Rotherham, around 1,400 girls, many of them underage, were sexually abused over a 16-year period at the hands of men from the town's Pakistani community. An estimate of the number of victims in Telford was calculated with the help of prosecutor Les Kelly from the Child and Women Abuse Studies Unit at London Metropolitan University, who reviewed the Mirror's figures. Diana Chauvel, a specialist child abuse solicitor, said these children were treated as sexual commodities by men who inflicted despicable acts of abuse. The survivors deserve an inquiry. They need to know how the abuse took place for so long and how so many perpetrators have never been brought to justice. 7 men were jailed in 2013 following Operational Chalice, a police inquiry into the child prostitution in the Telford area. Mubarak Ali, 34, sold teenage girls. This was the person that we were talking about in 1996. For the actual point, if you remember, was selling teenage girls. This was being talked about in 1996. Sold teenage girls, some as young as 13, for sex above an Indian restaurant in Telford, Shropshire, after grooming them. His brother, Andel Ali, 27, was handed a 26-year sentence after the pair sexually abused, trafficked, prostituted, or tried to prostitute 4 teenagers. You just can't live with stuff like that, can you? It just makes no sense, that, does it? It's just... This is why there needs to be an inquiry, because there's obviously a form of corruption, or at best or worst, whatever way you want to look at it, a level of not wanting to do their jobs. And either way, this needs to be addressed, and this needs to be addressed as quickly as possible, because this just shouldn't be happening. Mubarak Ali, 34, sold teenage girls for sex above an Indian restaurant in Telford after grooming them. He was sentenced at Salford Crown Court, which is pictured there. The paper says authorities were warned of the abuse a decade before Operation Chalice, which is what I pointed out. One victim, who was targeted by paedophiles and forced to sleep with dozens of men, said, The police have betrayed the children of this town for a second time. I dread to think how many victims there have been over the years. It wouldn't surprise me if the offending was on the same scale as Rotherham. It has been going on for at least 2 decades. When will it stop? Just questions that need to be answered, isn't it? West Mercia police have admitted errors were made in the way detailed reports had from street pastors on night patrol had been handed by police. Some of the street pastors had witnessed teenagers being sold drugs at underage parties and gangs of men grooming indoctrinated children. Well, what do you say to things like that? There's obviously a form of negligence. The police force in itself at least owes some form of reparations at least, and an apology to all of the people that have come forward and then been told that nothing's happened. There needs to be some form of reckoning, surely. I don't know what to call for, so to speak, but there needs to be some form of reckoning, because this is just unforgivable. Because this isn't just one group of police officers that have formed in multiculturalism. This is the idea from all the way from the 80s, probably late 80s as well, mind you, but 80s in general, and at least the 90s, that have been this way. That's a level of incompetence that is just not what you want from your police. And this is state-run police. I'm not trying to say that private police would be any better, but they can't be any fucking worse, can they? A spokesperson for Telford and Wrekin Council told the paper, "Child sex exploitation, or CSE, is a vile, evil crime. It's an issue right across the UK and has been for a long time." That, in itself, again the same as the Newcastle Council did when the Newcastle bits was up and about, said that it's prevalent in the whole of the UK, which is the reasons why I honestly believe that this is going to get worse. There's going to be more and more people that come forward from more and more different cities and towns. If it's such an evil and a vile crime, then Telford and Wrekin Council, why did you write to Amber Rudd saying that you don't want an investigation or an inquiry into what happened? Surely if you were actually thinking that and not just saying your politicised words, you would actually be saying, let's have an inquiry. But I'm guessing that's not going to happen, is it? Telford will be covered by the National CSE review. We welcome this. All agencies continue to work very closely together, and this remains our top priority. Police said 100 girls could have become victims in Telford between 2007 and 2009. Superintendent Tom Harding of West Mercia Police said communication had improved dramatically in recent years. What do you mean it's improved dramatically over in recent years? When you've had people that have come in, giving you lists of people's names that are abusers, giving you lists of where they are being abused, giving you people that have burnt houses down, that have run people over, that have used cars to kill other girls and things like that, that have been accused of being able to have sex and grooming gangs. And communication has dramatically increased when you've had face-to-face talks with people, including pastors coming off of the street to talk to you to say that no, this is actually happening. Decades before this was even happening. But just say the right words, everything will be right. Yeah? Don't think so. He added, incidents identified by pastors point to potential signs of child sex exploitation, and we use this as intelligence to target individuals who may need to be investigated. May need. Not will be, but may need. Use your actual proper investigative powers and actually investigate people that are being talked about and thrown into there. There is no fire without smoke. And you need to investigate all smoke, because otherwise you don't know when there's going to be a fire. Right, I'm going to leave this video here. I don't feel that it is my place to go into a political diatribe about what I think and what I think should be done. I do feel that this story needs to be pushed everywhere, so I'm not going to monetize this video. I'm also not going to put any links of mine in the description box below. I'm not even going to give a description of the story of what's going on. I'm just going to put in the bottom Telford grooming gang. I'm going to put Daily Mail link in there, and to be honest, that's going to be about it. Because I really don't want this to be about me and my channel and everything else like that. I want this to be about the story of the poor girls that have died, the poor girls that are still being raped, the poor girls that are still going on, and the injustice of people not being investigated, that are not being jailed. And the fact that over 200 people have been named in this investigation and only 9 of them have been brought to justice and have been jailed. That's a ludicrous percentage. Absolutely ludicrous percentage. So with that being said, please, even if you don't like me and you don't think this video is any good, please pass on the link to the Daily Mail news story. If you do like me, then pass on the whole video. I have no problem. Please use it as much as you can, wherever you can. Do not let the United Kingdom at this moment in time stifle this news story. It needs to be produced. It needs to be put out there. It needs to be talked about. The people that have died, for instance, Lucy, Eileen, Sarah, those people need to be remembered. And unfortunately, they won't be if we do not do our bit to keep this story alive. Because at this moment in time, it seems that the government doesn't want to. Well, look at that. I said I wasn't going to do any sort of publicity or any sort of politics on this. So, with that being said, without further ado, please share this video. Please share these sources. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this. A bit of a longer video today. And I bid you farewell. I bid you adieu. Take care. Bye bye for now.